Hello and welcome to the Conscious Leadership Podcast. My name is Julie Hoglin and I am the creator and founder. This podcast covers every aspect of conscious leadership and the Conscious Leadership Code. And if there is a particular example or angle or subject you would like an episode on, please reach out and let me know and I will create it specifically for you. Well, this is Julie, and surprisingly, I'm doing an interview, which for the Conscious Leadership Podcast listeners, you know I don't do that very often, so it's got to be a special person that I'm here interviewing. And I am with Wendy Firmin Price in Ockham in Surrey, and we are at the Heart Equine-Assisted Therapy and Coaching Centre. And I met Wendy in January on a course we were both on. And since then, I have accessed Wendy's services here in Ockham and her horses, which is what this is about, because it is about horses and therapy. And I'm fascinated by the whole kit and caboodle that Wendy does. And I think it's an alternative service for people who have stuff that they want to work on in some respects, but I know Wendy does far more than that, which is why I'm doing this interview. So Wendy, hello.
Hello, thank you, Julie.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I'd love to start off with a little bit about how did you get to working with horses? How did you start this whole process? Because I know you've been doing it for a very long time.
Well, it all began. It did all begin on my 12th birthday when I met my first love. Do you remember your childhood sweetheart?
Yeah, he didn't like me though.
Yeah. Well, mine was, he wasn't very tall, he was dark and he was handsome. And he became my confidant, he was my best friend, shoulder to cry on. And we went on to have 30 amazing years together. Wow. And was literally the introduction to what I do now. And if you haven't guessed it already, he wasn't two-legged, he was four, and his name was Tiggy. And he got me through my childhood. He really did help me keep on the straight and narrow. I became a childpreneur at the age of 12 and a half, 13, to ensure that I found the money and means to keep that pony. And having that stability, that stable relationship, pun intended, was the way that really helped me deal with our childhood stuff that we all go through. And I guess, and it wasn't called equine-assisted therapy back then, but he was my therapy, my counsellor, my coach, and everything else. Although, as I say, 50 years ago, it wasn't called that. Anyway, fast forward 30 years, and I'd started a riding school. And what I was noticing was that when I was terrified of certain things of my riding, which I had to do a 3'6" jumps in order to get my teaching exam. And I was terrified of going over 1'6". And what I noticed was on this particular day, I'm terrified of going over the jump. I'm terrified of the instructor. I'm terrified of all that, the embarrassment of it not being able to do it right, which I'm sure, we can all identify with. And then I clocked that this feeling I had was very similar, or actually identical, to the feeling I had, this terror and fear of being anxious about my partner coming home. Because unfortunately he had the disease of alcoholism. Yeah. And once he'd had a drink, he became very violent. And to cut a very long story sideways, the way that I was invited to find a different way to overcome the challenge with him was a different way to overcome fear, and was obviously the very beginning of my spiritual journey. And I thought, I wonder if that worked with my horses. I wonder if that worked with my riding. And sure enough, it did. I managed to get over the 3'6" jump in the exam. I did fall off in the flat part, so but that's another story for another time. But what it did do was show me that there was a power within my thoughts and my energy that was affecting my horses. And what was also interesting, that the number of horses I had at the time were all, whilst I was in all this fight and stress and chaos in my life, the horses in the herd were equally stressed out, fighting, and once I became much more aware of what was going on, and as I say, I managed to get my riding, overcome my fear of riding, I started helping people overcome their fear of riding as well. But then what we started discovering was that people would come to overcome their fear, and we would look at what was the fear in their life. But before they'd even got on a horse, the horses were doing their magic.
Yeah.
And you experienced that before we've even got into the paddock. They just have something. Yeah. And so it became less about the riding and just helping people overcome their fears. And of all the fears, the most common ones are, of course, not being good enough, not being perfect enough. And, of course, this shows up in our business, in our homes, with our family. We don't think we're a good enough parent, partner. And, you know, particularly I see this a lot with some of the entrepreneurial women and women bosses I work with, that they always have this underlying anxiety that, you know, they're going to be found out, you know, that imposter syndrome, that fear. And so the way that we work with the horses really helps to get people into a more confident place. And the coaching that I do with the horses is what sort of balances that out. And so you're probably asking, well, what is it about horses? Well, if we go back to looking at horses in the wild, they are a prey animal, and their ability to have survived, I think it's something like 64 million years, is pretty good going. Yeah. So they have to have something that's working for them. And one of those things is their ability to read energy. And they can read the energy of the weather, they can read the energy of the environment, they can read the energy of one another. And particularly with humans, when they come towards them, they're able to read the energy field of a human being before they see them physically. And
it blows my mind, this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Well, and us humans are made up of so many energetic patterns, and we know from Einstein that everything is energy, but we have this magnetic field around us that is dependent on the beliefs, the emotions, the coping skills. They're all vibrating at different energies, and when we have a block, that there is literally a block in our energy field which the horses are able to pick up. And when we clear that block, they will... Oh, did you hear the whinny?
I did hear the whinny.
Yeah, so we got the verification in the background there. So they're able to sort of read that. Now, with horses that are allowed to have an honest living... And by
honest living?
Yeah.
What does that mean for a horse?
To be able to give their opinion about things.
Oh, okay.
Be able to be who they are, because sometimes, sadly, they can live in an environment where they're very restricted and not allowed to be a horse, and so you can strip away their real ability to mirror back things to us or show us what's going on. So when you have the horses here, for example, that are able to have an opinion about things, and
they do.
So yes, sometimes it comes with a huge responsibility when it's not the opinion you wanted. But that then gives you a clean mirror reflection or a metaphor of what's going on for you. Yeah. And we were discussing how could this work for leadership, and very much this is what horses have in their own herd. And they have different a herd of horses. The first key value is that they need to seek harmony within the herd, contrary to all the sort of different photos and drama you see on TV. Horses don't want to be fighting and running about all over the place because they don't want to draw attention to themselves. As a prey animal, and being the type of animal they are, they're pretty much top of the food chain. They're the steak.
Yeah.
So they don't want to draw attention to themselves. So they don't like weak links, and they don't like inconsistency and lack of clarity. And they have different
same as humans, really.
Absolutely, and this is why they work so beautifully in our leadership programs that we run.
Yeah.
And there are different places horses lead from. So you might have an alpha who is quite the bossy one, but they aren't necessarily the horse that everyone in the herd will follow. So you have a lead horse.
That's exactly the same as leadership within business and teams.
Yeah. So you have a lead horse who's probably a little, 2 or 3 down from the alpha, but is the one that he says, oh, let's go and eat over here, and they'll go and eat over there. They'll follow that one, usually in preference to the alpha. The alpha is the one who's like, I'm having that pile of hay, and and everybody moves out his or her way. And then you have the omega leader, who leads from behind. Yeah. And actually, I described that wrong. You have the leader who comes from behind. The omega horse is the one who is the seemingly bottom of the herd, but he's or she is the herd member that takes a lot of the stresses of the herd. Again, you often see this in a team, the one that gets bullied or whatever. Oh, okay, yeah. Or the meek and mild one, believe it or not, is often the one taking the most stresses from in the herd or in the family or in the work environment. And then you have sort of different roles within the herd. So you, like in our herd, the curious one is Oliver. He's like, okay, guys, I'm going to go and check this out. He's the one. He's not brave enough to be the leader, but when there's something new, he's the one that goes out and investigates. He's the one that's not afraid to find out what's that interesting thing. Whereas other, if that was Robin then, or Poppy, they'd be go, oh my God, what's that? And they would sort of run in the opposite direction. So every horse has a place within that herd. Now, when horses meet another horse or within the herd, and particularly when horses meet humans, their sort of unspoken question is, am I the leader or you the leader? If there's a problem, do I follow you or you do follow me? And in that split second, and they will do this very subtly, they might just gently push on you, just with their, not hard, but just, and if there isn't a boundary clear or a response, they'll go, oh, okay, fine, I know I'm the one that leads in when there's a problem.
It's interesting,
and
isn't
so
it? So interesting.
The moment a horse meets you, it will quietly ask itself, because at the end of the day, a horse, being a prey animal, and we're predators, is putting their life in our hands. Yeah. And so they just need to know where they stand. And this is often what people don't realise. And they think, oh, he's doing this, he's doing that. And no, he just needs strong leadership, because most horses actually don't want to be the leader.
It's like most humans don't want to lead.
It's you. This is where you get the attack. You think of your prime ministers and your managers and your leaders. They're all the one that gets all the stuff thrown at them. And yeah, it's a vulnerable place. In the wild, the herd leader is at the front. Okay, so it could get picked off by the lion. Conversely, if you're the omega, you could get picked off behind. Or so horses have, because of all these interesting dynamics, they make excellent ways of working with to discover in a team exactly where do you fit in the herd, where should you be. And we have a great exercise where you have to sort of move a horse from one end of the arena to the next, but you're not allowed to touch it. And it's about putting people discovering where they most fit. And the first time they do it, they go where they think they should be, or where they're supposed to in their mind. But actually, by the time they come back the second time and they're allowed to swap around, go where they want to, they actually probably find more of a truer place where they want to be. And sometimes it can be a real turn up.
Yeah.
And so that's just sort of one of the exercises we do. And by being able to play with these different exercises, you can solve any problem. I mean, for example, we had a client, a company brought a team down, 30 people down for the day. And there was one chap who had been trying to get this sales lead across the line for 3 weeks, and he hadn't succeeded.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was working with Brembo, and I can't remember the exact exercise he had to do, but he was like trying to get Brembo to do something, and Brembo's like, got his arms folded. No. And so, anyway, the inspiration that he came in his mind, that what he had to do to encourage Brembo to move, which was completely different. So he had to, I think, change complete direction or tack or whatever. And then the gentleman realised that's what he had to do with his client. He was just change how he was saying something, and he got the sale that day.
Fabulous.
Fabulous. That was just sort of one thing. Now, a great way the horses help us, and particularly in leadership. And again, at the end of the day, we're all leaders at some point in our life. We're either leading our family, we're leading our friends.
Or we lead ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we're not, someone's going to be leading us.
Yeah,
now, sometimes that's really quite nice, not to have any responsibility and to make the choices. But for me, I'm not very good at being following. So
yeah.
But what we need to be able to do is what makes a leader worth following and want to follow is the way that we handle our boundaries, our integrity, and boundaries are a fantastic way the horses can show where you've got weak boundaries. And again, I was discussing earlier that when they first meet you, they want to, they'll just maybe slightly just push on you just to see. But also it's like, where's the boundary? And quite fascinating. Horses have a very big...
It's bigger than ours, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very peanut-shaped energy field around them, space place. And when we're in their energy field, they want to push us out. And equally, sometimes they're in our space and we want to ask the horse to step. But if there's no interaction or no correction of that boundary, however it's coming, from which direction, or rather the person that makes the boundary where they're going to hold their space is the leader.
Yeah, okay.
So if the horse can manage to push you, that little exercise I have where you've got to stand on the block, if they can push you or make you step back, they'll go, okay, fine, you've got to follow me. And it's just split second. And it's not mean, they're not being horrible or anything, they're just...
It's exactly the same as we do as humans, isn't it? We do, whether we do it consciously or not, it's a whole other thing, but we do test. We test our own boundaries and others. And what we get away with, we get away with.
Yeah.
And doing that, I'm going to say doing that consciously makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I must admit, I'd love to ask you, because when I came down and did the first day with you, and I'm not a person who gets scared very easily at all, which somebody told me that I probably need to look at the weekend. But anyway, it's a whole nother episode. But I've never been so scared in all my life. When you told us, the group that were here that day, as individuals rather than a business team, but as individuals, we came together on one of your days, and you said we had to go and find a horse to work with and ask it if it wanted to work with us. I have never been so scared in all my life that the horse might actually say no. Now, luckily, it didn't on that first day. I went to Woody and asked Woody, and he gave me a big nod of his head. But the second day I came down, because listeners, I've done more than one day with Wendy because I find it fascinating and so much learning's come from it. I chose a horse that was unavailable. And your question to me was, where are you unavailable in your life? And I thought, oh, here we go. We haven't even started the day yet. I haven't got the horse out the stable. And I'm like, right, I'm already learning. So how does that actually work? How would a horse, and I say the horse because it wasn't my decision, how would a horse know? How does it connect with, I suppose, the individual to know that actually it's going to be happy to work with you?
Well, it comes back to the law of attraction.
I was attractive that day.
So, as we know the law of attraction from The Secret, and people think of it as just a manifesting thing, but actually there's a lot more going on to the law of attraction than most people realise.
Yeah.
And in conjunction with the law of attraction is the law of reflection. And again, this is something we learn on my workshops, how these two work together. So what tends to happen is the energy you are in you'll get drawn to the energy of something similar. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, in that particular moment, you're drawn to so anything that was being unavailable in you, whether it was a belief or a pattern or a coping skill or something, in the moment that you needed some learning, because again, when you're with our horses, what comes up is the thing that you need to work on in the moment, in this present moment. So it's not it's not always what you've come to work with. They will bring up what's really going on.
Yes.
So the energy of unavailability case, in whatever form that was, there would have been a vibration to that matched that horse in that particular incident. Or, as we were talking about in the reflection, there was something about the law of reflection. Either the horse would have been reflecting a characteristic that you needed to work on, or, as we've heard, opposites attract. Some horse might be needing to rebalance you. So if you're too much one side, you'll attract a horse that will show you how to be the opposite. But in the unavailability, usually we have an energy that we are leaking out unavailability. Now, it could be we're unavailable to our clients, we're unavailable to our partner, we're unavailable to ourselves. And it's an invitation just to, just check, where am I being unavailable? And again, it might even be to yourself. And the key thing, if we trust whatever comes up in that moment, and again, if you working with the horses from a coaching or therapy point of view, it's vitally important that the horse has the ability to say no. We can't take from them. And you'll often hear me say we don't use the horses, we work with them. And so if they don't feel you, if they just don't, there just may be something that your energy is not what they can teach and help with, or they just maybe not feeling it that day and don't want to do the work.
Just don't want to do the work. Yeah.
However, but if you think sometimes when we're unavailable, for a friend or whatever, it's because we're just not feeling it that day. We don't want to interact. And by having that permission for the horses to be able to be true, then that you, as I said earlier, you then get the ability to have a much truer relationship with who's right, because that unavailable horse was right to show you there's an unavailable pattern going on, and we just need to explore that. And then what horse was right for you, you got pushed to work with that day, which still, I think it was Minnie then, wasn't it? Then Minnie brought up some really old stuff, didn't she?
She did.
And,
Yes, she did.
And so how this can really help teams is, like, at the end of the day, most businesses need a good return on investment, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of people,
more so now than ever before, I believe.
And one of the challenges that people come with is that at the moment businesses are reluctant to pay out because they can't always see the results.
Yeah.
Just a question, of the things that you've just learned, just briefly, how many of those tools or patterns are still helping you now?
From
the little sessions that you had with
I think some of them have gone in really deep and absolutely, definitely have changed how I show myself and share myself into the world. Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I feel like my focus is so much clearer. And I feel like one of the days we worked on was around money. I mean, that wasn't actually what I ended up working on, but the focus for that day really shifted something that I didn't even know I was carrying because it was operating out my unconscious. So whatever it was, it raised it up, and I've taken more action on what I like for my business since that first day than I probably have in the previous few months. To be really honest.
Great.
Yeah,
and this
huge result.
This is where the companies and businesses and executives, entrepreneurs can get a good return on investment because it's so experiential.
Yeah.
It goes in.
Yeah,
it goes
absolutely.
in, and you allow that experience you have with a horse, or as you can feel, you still carry with you, still remember it, and I know from my own coaching and being coached, it's very easy to tell people
what they want to hear.
Absolutely, and you don't know whether you've really shifted anything.
No.
Now, you know that if you're just paying lip service, Minnie ain't going nowhere.
No, she's not. Neither's Woody. Neither's Bounty.
And this is great because people have to go into what the emotion of that feeling, of that new belief or that new coping skill is, and get into a new vibration. And this is where it works better and more lasting. So ultimately, you get better value for money. And it can help with so many things. The communication between a team, horses have a very strict way of communicating. And when you learn this and how they communicate, you can use that for team conversations. They have, as I say, this clear strategy for leadership. And although there are different styles of leadership, and you need to find where are you best, that's something then once people are in the right place and they're in the right role, and they are really able to bring out their strengths. Whereas when you're, a square peg in a round hole, as we know, you're going against it and you don't feel happy.
Yeah.
And so to get a team to really work well, or to even as a solopreneur, you have to have all your inner characteristics in alignment and wanting to pull together. And this is where the horses can help.
Yeah, because if you're in conflict internally with yourself, and sometimes you don't realise that, it hampers any progress you're going to make to do anything because you're in conflict.
Yeah.
And one of the key things I learned is you can, and you've mentioned earlier, we can all say things and not intentionally lie, but we can lie through those saying of the thing. But you can't do that with a horse because it calls you on it. It's the most incredible experience, which is why I'm interviewing you, and I'm really conscious of the time as well. Okay. Yeah. So, Wendy, so what you do, you can do it for individuals, you do it for teams, for business, and I know you teach and train other equine, for individuals to become equine therapists and coaches. Mm-hmm. How do people get hold of you? What's the best way for anybody listening that has any interest in anything we've been discussing for themselves, their business, or to become one of you? How do they get hold of you?
So if they visit theheartcenteruk.com, there's a form there, and if they just sign up and write in that they've heard the podcast and anything they're interested in. Yeah. Now, one of the most common things we hear is, "Oh, but I'm afraid of horses."
Oh, no, I can understand that, but you're not riding them.
It's not about being ridden, but also the question is, as horses can represent power, my question would be, what part of your power are you afraid of?
Yes.
And we have had people who have been absolutely terrified, and in the morning working with our smallest little pony, Abel, and by the afternoon, by lunchtime, working with our biggest horse. And when we look at that fear from a very different point of view, then you're able to clear that fear, own your power, and step into it. In fact, I have a workshop coming up called Stand in Your Authentic Power, and that's end of March, beginning of April, and we'll be able to get, if your listeners just sign up on the Heart Centre newsletter, I'll give them the dates and where it is.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay.
And finally, it takes courage to look within.
Yes, it does.
But when you look within, you'll see much, if you don't go within, you'll go without.
Nice. If you don't go within, you'll go without. It's absolutely true. Because we lead ourselves internally. We may think we do it up here in our head, but actually we don't, which is what this whole podcast is around, that, Conscious Leadership podcast. I'm going to say thank you very much. I wish we could talk for longer. I do know you've got another call to make, so maybe we can do a second interview at some point in the future.
Yeah, I think we'll do a different theme. And you'll see what your listeners particularly would like to see how the horses could help them.
Yeah.
So
I'd highly recommend it to everybody listening. Highly recommend it. It's an experience. You will learn so much. Even if you think you don't need to, you will. Oh, I can assure you that. Yeah. And the horses they're not, if they don't want to work the day, you don't ask them to work. So the horse that you end up working with is a horse that wants to work and wants to help you to do whatever the work is that you're doing. So they're not, they're not nasty because they want to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the horses here love doing and supporting us humans finding our truth. And that's the key thing, is finding our truth, and then you can live it and be it. And more than anything, the horses help you find your authentic self.
Yeah.
It takes courage, but
it's worth it. Definitely worth it. Thank you,
Wendy.
Julie.
Thank you. We'll have another conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a relatively short interview with Wendy, and I just wanted to add an additional Julie part to the end of it, and to re-emphasise Wendy's website, which is theheartcenteruk.com. That's theheartcenteruk.com. There's a blog on there, the information about the days that she does and the courses that she runs are detailed. And I've picked up a brochure as well from the centre. And not only does Wendy work with adults, she works with teenagers as well. So she can help teenagers who are stressed, scared or struggling. And working with horses who are intuitive animals, as Wendy mentioned in the interview, can really support any one of us in reality, adult or child, or teenager or youth, whatever we want to describe ourselves as, to work out what's really going on for us. And I hope halfway through the interview you could hear the whinny in the background, because very often what happens, somebody will say something or you will think something, and a horse completely not connected with the situation, so like the interview yesterday, will confirm it with a whinny or a neigh. It's fascinating when you really are in the moment and it happens. Now, of course, they could all be metaphors, and the intuitive heart expansion of a horse is far greater than of us as humans. It has to be, as Wendy said, they're herd animals, they're prey animals. They have to work with their intuition. And perhaps because they are a herd animal and are however many centuries and decades and millenniums old, as Wendy mentioned, they are far more linked to their intuition than us as humans are currently. My true belief is that a lot of our intuition has been sort of, worn out of us with society and, how we think we need to be. And the one thing, and I will say it again, and I said it in a previous episode I did when I spoke about physically working with horses for myself, is that you cannot lie. If you say something and it's not true and it doesn't come from your heart and from your soul, the horse knows. I'm going to say it's quite a weird experience, and it works. It's the truth. Now, how you work with the horses, you have to think about what comes at you. You have to think about what it is you want to do. And I've worked with Wendy on a day on money mindset. I've worked with Wendy on a day it ended up being for me about focus and which way did I want to go and what did I want to do next. So there are many subjects you can work with Wendy and these horses. So I would really urge you, if you've never experienced this, and you don't have to, you're not riding a horse, you're leading it, or they're leading you, or you're going nowhere, please contact Wendy through theheartcenteruk.com. Please go and have a look. It's an incredible experience. I will be doing more with Wendy. It's an incredible experience is all I can say. And Wendy does have a heart of gold. She's very giving. She's asked some really intuitive questions. She is a spiritual mentor. She has a diploma in practical metaphysics. And she's the only equine-assisted riding school and therapist that has that in the UK. So I'm reading. And it is a riding school as well. It's in Ockham in Surrey. It's basically junction 10 on the M25 for those of you that are in the south. I travel round to her from Kent. It only takes me an hour. Of course, relying on the M25. So give it a go. Have a look at it. I really do encourage you to. So it's theheartcenteruk.com. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Conscious Leadership Podcast. And if you have found it useful, please leave a review. And if you have found it useful, please share it with others that will find it useful as well. If you want to know more about my publishing, please follow me through to the Amazon author page. And if you would like to follow me on any of my other social media channels, please do, which also includes a YouTube channel.